Okay, so here we are in week 4 talking about ethics and specifically The Killing Fields by George Gubiner and his cultivation theory. I think that probably maybe I'm a little twisted on this point of view. Um, the questions were asked. I've thought a lot about this. Is there ever an appropriate time to make violence in the media? Is it ethical? Um, I think that we need to know what's really happening. Have we all become part of the mean world syndrome? Maybe. Because how many times have you heard that the world is a different place than it was 20 years ago? Is it really different, or are we just desensitized to it? I don't know that we're really desensitized to the violence enough that it doesn't bother us. I don't think I buy into that because, for example, 9/11, they were trying to report the news and inadvertently caught people jumping from the buildings. Um, and those images stuck in people's psyche, and they're still bothered by them all this time later about people jumping to their death. Recently, at the shooting at Louisiana Lake in Oklahoma City, they were trying to report on the news and accidentally were panning over the dead body of the shooter and didn't know it until later, and then they pulled back when they realized that there was a dead body there. But and people, were shocked by that. I think some people, when violent images like that, 9/11 especially comes to mind, it was played over and over and over in our minds, and is still played on 9/11 every year, the days leading up to it and following. People develop PTSD as a result of the violence they saw on TV. And when the Murrah bombing happened here, which is something probably as old as the Killing Fields in 1994, but people were traumatized by it on the television, not because they were actually in it, but because of what they saw played out on the television in the days afterwards. So I don't know that we've become desensitized to it. Are we used to it? Probably too much. Do our kids expect it? Probably too much. When you ask the question, should we go back to the Wizard of Oz type movies? Maybe this is where I'm the twisted one. As a librarian and a lover of literature, I would have to say, yes, let's go back to those type movies because then they knew how to tell a story. In my opinion, in today's, he talks about they're producing it for a global market and violence is much easier and cheaper to do and humor is cultural based. I think storytelling and more expensive. Storytelling is more expensive. It takes more time. They have to lay out the story. So they chop it up and they throw in violence and explosions and people pay money to see it. And there isn't really much storyline. I really don't like that as someone who likes a good story. Lay it out for me. Draw me into it. Make me care about it instead of just blowing things up. So, when it comes to that aspect, what type of movies, I would say that the older movies were better storytellers than today's modern movies because it's all about time and money. Do we need a different set of ethics for our gatekeepers? Maybe so. Maybe we need to hold them to a higher standard because they are the gatekeepers of information. We need to know what's happening and to be aware of the crime so that, we can protect ourselves and that we can take action. But, the way they frame it was the quote that you made. It sometimes can be for ratings, for their own benefit, not the public good. So I think we need to hold them probably to a higher standard of ethics about what they're putting out there and how they're putting it out, that message out there. When it comes to school shootings, I don't think that they're doing anyone any good in kind of giving you all this information about the shooter and the shooter's life and all these things about the shooter before the shooter's even been to a trial. The trial will decide all these facts and take into consideration the shooter's life and why the shooter took that action. It just makes them look like they get their 15 minutes of fame, and I think that is a disservice to the victims. I think in those incidents, when they're going to report on it, they should report about the victims. They should give us all the details about the victims and those great people whose lives were cut short, and show us the effects of the event on the world at large and the community, so perhaps people will get the impact of the effect, and instead of giving fame to someone who has created the havoc. Thanks for listening to my rant. Sorry. See you guys next week.